Hello, lovely people. I'm Debs. Welcome back to my channel, Raina Reads Stuff. I'm in the book shack and it's Sunday. I'm going to do my weekly reading wrap up. I've had a bit of a confused week this week. One of those weeks where you don't quite settle into doing anything. Do you know what I mean? You start something and you put it down and pick up something else and read a little bit and put it down. But I have actually achieved a couple of things. So, first off, have I buried my book? It was here just a sec. I have buried my book. First off, it was the final week of Chekhovember, which was an event that was organised by James at Quaint and Curious Volumes, Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads, and Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics. So, what we were meant to be reading for this week were a couple of short stories. The first one was The Lady with the Toy Dog, or Pet Dog, or some other form of dog, depending really on who the translator was. This was great, loved it. Until last week, when we read Ward 6, I don't think I'd ever read any of Chekhov's short stories. So last week's was very, very dark. I did enjoy it. It was very dark. This week's less so. So The Lady with the Toy Dog is about a guy who thinks, he's middle-aged. He thinks he's a bit of a Lothario and has a way with women. He meets this woman while they're both on holiday away from their spouses, and they strike up a bit of a relationship. She falls for him, which, he thinks is only to be expected. And then they go their separate ways. But when he gets home, he can't stop thinking about her. And turns out he's actually fallen for her. Which is karma, really, come to bite him in the backside. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed where it stopped. I think if it had continued further into the story, it would have become just another love story. But the place that it stopped at, I thought was perfect. It reminded me a little bit of a book called A Certain Smile by Françoise Sagan. But I really enjoyed it. The second story we were meant to read was called Gooseberries. And then someone, and I'm pretty sure it was Pat at Book Chat with Pat, discovered that Gooseberries was the second story in a trilogy, which, although can be read, each of them can be read separately, they link together. The first one being called The Man in the Case, and the second one being called About Love. So I decided to read all three, and really enjoyed these as well. They were featuring, they were linked. Like, for example, in the first story, which we weren't going to read, I discovered why one of the central characters in the second story, who is called Ivan Ivanovich, has a completely separate surname from his brother. But these were really interesting. Basically, they were about two guys on a hunting trip, and then they were telling each other stories. But I really like Chekhov's style. And then I read, because Gooseberries, all of these books, I have the complete works of Chekhov in various bits and pieces in ebook. But I also have gooseberries in my Little Black Penguin Classics. And this version also included two other stories, the first of which is called The Kiss, and the second is called The Two Volodjas. So I read both of those as well. So I ended up reading 6 Chekhov short stories. I really enjoyed all of them. I think The Lady with the Toy Dog and also The Kiss in this one were my 2 favourites. Now, because this is in hard copy, I'm counting it as one of my Read What You Own challenge. It runs to an entire 56 pages, but I don't care. And we'll go into why I don't care in a bit. The first book I read this week was this, Mary Oliver's New and Selected Poems, which I was lucky enough to get for my birthday. My daughters bought me this. And this is beautiful. I can really see why people think Mary Oliver as their favourite poet, American poet. There were all sorts in here. This is New and Selected Poems, Volume 1. So we have poems. The first section is 1991 to 2, and it goes backwards. So there's some from House of Light in 1990, some from Dreamwork in 86, some from American Primitive in 83, 12 Moons in 79, The Night Traveller and Sleeping in the Forest, which were both 78, and from The River Styx, Ohio, and other poems from 72. And it goes back as far as selections from No Voyage that was published in 1963 and 65. I really loved these. I'd love to read some more. They're very nature orientated, but they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Some of them are sad. But her descriptions of nature and the weather and things like that are just lovely. So I enjoyed that. Now, that was a couple of weeks ago. I did I'll get round to it later book tag, and this was one of the books on there, as was this. I estimate I received this book. This edition was published in 1970. I reckon I received this book when I was about 10. Now, I've just turned 59. It's been on my bookshelf, unread, for nearly 50 years. Guess what? I've read it. In the book tag, I said that I knew the story. But The Jungle Books by Rudyard Kipling is far more than the story of Mowgli. And I'd never realised. I know of Rikki Tikki Tavi, but I didn't realise it was part of this. But in addition to stories in the jungle, you have stories in ice. You have the story of the seal. I loved these. I think I really enjoyed the first one, Mowgli's Brothers. I really enjoyed Rikki Tikki Tavi. But then things like how fear came and the King's Anchors. I can't believe it's taken me nearly 50 years to read this book. Well, I've read it now and I'm very pleased with myself. Next up, I read this. I was going through for the Read What You Own challenge some of my shelves that I thought had unread fiction on them and came across this. I'll admit it looks like unread fiction. Well, it isn't. I love this cover, by the way. Really love that cover. This is called Dreamers. The subhead is When the Writers Took Power, Germany 1918. And it's by a guy called Volker Weidermann. Weidermann. And this is about that period at the end of the First World War when a group of intellectuals, including writers, artists, architects, one night took control of Munich and declared Bavaria separate to the rest of Germany, and in a revolution took on governing it. These included people like Kurt Eisner, who was the first person to declare himself prime minister. But then you have characters in here like Thomas Mann, Ernst Toller, Rainer Maria Rilke. And I actually didn't know anything about this. It doesn't last very long. I mean, not the book. The book lasts as long as it takes you to read it. But the coup didn't last very long. And in fact, uh, Kurt Eisner is killed. He's shot in the street partway through this. But these guys were all idealists. They had this brilliant idea that they could take control and they could create a different type of society, one where workers weren't poor, everybody had food and appropriate housing. But as the title of the book suggests, they were dreamers. They were great with the ideas, not so good with the practicalities. And in a very short space of time, like between November 1918 and April 1919, they took control, they lost control, they regained control. They couldn't hold it together. They couldn't control the military. They couldn't get the people in the countryside on their side. They had no history of politics or governing, and they were dreamers. But it's a really good book with a really good cover. What else have I read? Oh, Alex from Alex Unabridged sent me down a complete rabbit hole this week with this. Are Women People? This is by Alice Dewar Miller. And this is a book of suffragette writing. And Alex had mentioned it in, he did a poetry video, I'll link it below, last week. And this is the one of the poets that he featured. I'd never heard of her, but because ebooks don't count on my Read What You Own challenge, I had no compulsion in downloading it from Project Gutenberg because A, it's not a physical book, it doesn't count towards the Read What You Own challenge, and I didn't pay for it. Okay, so those are my reasons. And read this, it's only short, it's about 40 odd pages. Some of them are really funny, some of them are done in styles of other poets, and she apologizes to all of them in here. But yeah, it's a lot of suffragette stuff. I like this. One of the ones I like. It's not a poem, but she's answering the criticisms of why women shouldn't get the vote with a why we oppose votes for men. And she says, 1, because a man's place is in the armoury. 2, because no really manly man wants to settle any question otherwise than fighting about it. Number 3, because if men should adopt peaceable methods, women will no longer look up to them. 4, because men will lose their charm if they step out of their natural sphere and interest themselves in other matters than feats of arms, uniforms, and drums. And 5, because men are too emotional to vote. Their conduct at baseball games and political conventions shows this, while their innate tendency to appeal to force renders them particularly unfit for the task of government. I really like that. Today, I read the group read for the new December readathon, which is called Ghosts of Christmas Past, Resurrecting a Tradition. And the group read for that is The Old Nurse's Story by Elizabeth Gaskell, which is really good. I've read it before. You see, I've read it before because look, I've put a sticker on my little black book. This one didn't have a sticker on it. I've got a box set of 80, so it's really difficult to see what you've read and what you haven't. So I put a little sticker on the spine. Anyway, it's only 30 pages long. It's a classic Victorian ghost story, and it is brilliant. And I am not going to tell you what it's about because it's only December the 1st. This event is going on all month, and I have no idea when people are going to read the group read. There's another story in this volume called Curious If True, which is also fun. Now, if you don't want to read the Old Nurse's Story, which is available incidentally on Project Gutenberg, if you haven't got it and want to download it. But if you don't want to read it, my friend Mark at Book Time with Elvis, who is one of the co-hosts for this event, like me, this event has been set up by Vin at Revenant Reads. Mark is reading this on his channel in parts. The first part, I think, has gone up today. I'll put his details below. Head over and have a listen, see what you think. You could class it as an audiobook. That would work. Right. My update on Read What You Own, which is a book event created by Olly at Olly and co-hosted by MJ at Reading This Life and Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads and Crystal at Fiber Artsy. The challenge is to read books that you own before you buy any more. Now, as you know, if you've been here before, I only do physical books. So my challenge, because my buying was out of control this year, my challenge is 125 books before I purchase any more physical books. I am now, with this week, down to 95. I am classing these. I know they're ridiculously small, but Olly and Co have decided this year that the page count is relevant too. So, for people who read really long books. So they have decided that the average book is 250 pages. Therefore, by that calculation, if I want to read 125 books, we're talking 31,250 pages. I have currently read 810 pages. No, sorry, 7,810 pages. And if you divide that by 250, that means I should be on 31 books read, just over 31 books read. I am actually on 30, so I've got room to spare with the page count. Also, I'm doing a couple of very long books this month. 2 books totaling 2,000 pages between them. So that gives me plenty of spare room to read little books like this if I want to. So I'm going to. This evening I'm hoping to finish off the Claudio Pinheiro book we're reading for the Pinheiro project this month, which is Time Flies. Nearly done with that. And then we'll see how we go for the rest of the month. So that's it from me for today. I hope you've been reading great stuff. If you're taking part in any event at all, leave a comment. Just leave a comment because I like to chat, okay? And it's always lovely to hear from you. So, I keep thinking there's something I've missed. But as I can't remember what it is, there's really no point in continuing. Suffice to say, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to. It's always lovely to hear from you in the comments. And I do really appreciate you stopping by. I will be back again soon. I don't know what I'll be waffling about, but I will be back again soon. And I hope you can join me. I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.